from the Penn Libraries.
I'm Anu Vedantam, Director of the Weigel Information Commons at Penn Libraries. It's my pleasure to introduce our opening speaker, Kim Eke. Kim is the Director for Teaching, Research, and Learning at Penn Libraries. As her title implies, Kim oversees a large and complex directorate, which includes the two commons, courseware support, research and instructional services, and several departmental libraries. Kim joined Penn recently from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and she's a fearless champion of new media technologies. She will set the stage for our day today.
Thank you, Anu. Let me get set up. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction, Anu. It is so encouraging to see so many people here today with an interest in teaching and learning. There is a wonderful program planned. You'll have ample opportunities to listen, learn, contribute, and of course, steal the best ideas. So let's get started with some brief opening remarks. I thought it might be useful to start with a brief overview of some trends that are really impacting our current context. These are trends that are outlined in the New Media Consortium's 2014 Horizon Report. And many of you have probably read that report, but it might be worth taking a second look at the trends because this year they really kind of took a left turn compared to previous years. They've organized the trends in long-range, mid-range, and fast-moving trends. And so these are two trends that are likely to impact us 5 years or beyond. However, they are moving. The first is the evolution of online learning. It seems like there's not a day that goes by that there's not a new announcement about some new technology, a tool, a platform that is really going to bring us ever closer to a highly interactive, socially engaging, and academically rich experience online. And so while this trend is slow moving, I think what's important is the implication that we're going to continue to evolve these technologies to reach our ideal state, and that we as institutions need to be prepared for that eventuality. The second long-range trend is agile approaches to institutional change, and those are two concepts not often juxtaposed. And so while at Penn we might have a wonderful entrepreneurial mindset that embodies all that we do, we still are likely to face some challenges. And that's because technology is a really important driver of educational change right now, and the pace of technology evolution is so rapid. And yet at our institutions, we have a wonderful time-honored tradition of shared governance and decision-making. And so those two concepts, when pushed together, make a little bit of a natural tension. And so the question will be for all of us as we look forward 5 years and beyond, is how can we as institutions really take advantage of changing circumstances, business models, new pedagogies in ways that allow us to stay in step with what's happening in society, but also aligns with our values as institutions of higher learning. So now we come to our mid-range. We can see them. They're not right upon us yet, but they're pretty close. So these are 3 to 5 years projected. The first is the incredible rise in data-driven learning and assessment with hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of students or learners engaged in online activities. There's all kinds of little data exhaust, they call it, that's left behind. What can be gleaned from those activities and that data left behind that can inform our teaching practices? Are there ways to look at how students are learning, what their outcomes are, how we can think about assessment that really haven't been available to us before, either because of scale or because of technology? Oopsie. Second is the trend that is really a shift from students as consumers of education to students as creators. And so if students today are able to create, to collaborate, to learn, to access pretty much most of the things that they need to do through their phones or their tablets or their computers and the internet, what digital affordances can we take advantage of as educators that will really enable them to be more engaged, to create, and to demonstrate their understanding? I think it's pretty exciting. Then we have our fast-moving trends, and those, if you don't feel them upon you today, you probably will very shortly. And the first is the ubiquity of social media. It's very simply put that social media is changing the way that all of us interact. And it's setting new expectations for the ways people in higher education interact. And so if you consider that you may use your social networks for sharing resources, you might be crowdsourcing some projects with students, you may be leveraging them for new forms of scholarly communication. It's really important to recognize that social media is having an enormous influence on education today. And so for me, it makes me think about, if we know that learning is socially situated, in what ways are we able to take advantage of these social networks really to engage students academically and yet still honor and respect their rights to privacy? And then the last fast-moving trend is really the integration of online, hybrid, and collaborative learning. And so what we're seeing really is that the distinctions between these three concepts are falling away, and what you're left with is simply learning. And so that means, as educators contemplating creating and designing really interactive and engaging learning experiences for students, they have a whole much broader, wider universe of options from which to choose. It means they have people and networks. They have a vast array of tools and technologies, and they have a ton of content. You've got content that we license through the libraries, open content, and the content that's created within the course between the instructors and students. So, to say that our current context might be a little confusing could be an understatement. We were looking at 6 trends, and they're certainly not exclusive, and yet there's still a lot going on in there. But I'm here to say, take heart, Penn community, because today we have people that are already wrestling with these important questions, learning, and they're willing to share with us. A lot of our presenters will be touching on these topics. And what I think is also important to recognize is that while the knowledge of what's happening with campus innovations might not be evenly distributed across the campus in terms of our collective awareness, it's events like these today and people like you who are here with your openness and willingness to share ideas and learn that is really going to advance the discussion at Penn. So thank you for that. And now, wrapping up, I would just encourage you to look around, to network with the people that are here, to share your experiences, and to recognize also there's a host, like a small army of support people here like me who really want to help faculty. So whether it's helping you with coming up with ideas and strategies you might use inside the classroom to be more engaging with students, or using Canvas effectively, or even helping your students with digital projects, we want to help. So please join me in thanking everybody, the students, faculty, and staff who have made today happen. There was a lot of work behind the scenes, and I think it is a good time to get started. Turn it away to Anu. Thanks to you.
Thank you so much, Kim. You've given us some big picture ideas to start off our day, and it will provide really good context for our 5 faculty speakers. So I'm going to briefly introduce each of our 5 faculty speakers, and part of my unpleasant responsibility will be to enforce a 10-minute time limit on each speaker, and I'm going to do that by awkwardly motioning to them as time wraps up, so please be kind to me. Before we start, some very quick announcements. In your folders, you'll find several items. If you find your program and turn your program over, on the back page of your program, you will see the names of the people who put in long hours to make today possible. I would like to express my deep gratitude to everyone on the Symposium planning team. A day like this does not come about without a lot of people putting a lot of time in. Also listed there on the back of your program is a short address that will take you to a web link where you can find all the materials from today's session, including the videos of all of our presentations. Also in your packet is a 16-page document with raw feedback from 56 Penn students on this year's guiding question, which is how can technology empower us and our students as learners? We've also given you a highlighter so you can mark up the quotes that speak to you, and we're hoping that we will take the comments that the students have taken time to give us and build on them in the conversations through the rest of the day. So for the faculty panel each year, we try to bring together together faculty who use technology in many ways, in many disciplines, teaching many types and many levels of courses. We hope that you will find many ideas today that you can consider over the weekend. We hope that our Symposium Canvas course will provide a place for you to connect with each other and connect with our speakers today. Our first speaker this morning is Professor Jeffrey Babin, who teaches engineering entrepreneurship at SEAS and Wharton. He has been an adventurous early adopter of many technologies. In recent years, he has used Canvas and Piazza in interesting ways. Thanks to his guidance, we were able to get Piazza going for the Canvas course that all of you are in, which hopefully we will have fun with over the next few days. A key part of his work is embracing the idea that technology can change lightning fast, and something that is hot today could be stale tomorrow. I'm going to turn it over to Professor Babin.
So I have the scars to show. And I'm one of these people that I try everything, and my students can attest to this, that they'll be the unwitting victims of all different technology. But I think what I wanted to cover with you today in my 10 minutes or less, because less is always good, is to talk to you about really two concepts, one of which is asynchronous learning and the use of technology, and the other being synchronous. We're all familiar with synchronous learning, real-time, students are there, whether it's online or offline, and the faculty are there. But asynchronous is something that goes whenever the students need to access it, whenever the faculty are able to access it, and can happen not in real time, which has been really valuable. So anytime that I'm dealing with technologies, I'm always looking for a couple of things that has to be in place. And the first of which, I kind of live by engagement and adoption. Engagement being me being engaged with the class, students being engaged with the class, and adoption being, quite frankly, people actually using the stuff. If people don't use it, it goes away, and I try something else that's in favor of it. And the adoption part is really important, because often what you find is if somebody has already got a tool in place and they're using it, I'd much rather use that. Canvas is a hugely powerful platform, and sometimes there are many other things, and Piazza is going to be one of them, where I didn't really see a good reason to use Piazza because it had discussion capabilities in Canvas. But the students basically said they had already adopted Piazza, and so that was an important aspect to them. Sometimes with technology, we find that it just doesn't work. And so in the second example that I'm going to talk about, we went with something that cost more, was not a university-sponsored technology, but it just flat out worked, and so we used it. And so that's a really important aspect of it. But ultimately, we do try to expand the reach a little bit, and I say I fall short of MOOCs because the classes that I teach are often case-based or business planning classes that don't scale as well as the MOOC concepts that we're dealing with, although we're trying to work on some scalability issues there. But everything has to come back to what the students are learning and whether they're learning. So I'll talk first about Piazza, and then I'll talk about GoToMeeting. Piazza is a threaded discussion. That's pretty much all it is. They have a lot of other capabilities that they've built into it, but at the end of the day, we've been using threaded discussions since, Lou can attest to this, the old bulletin board services when text online services first started coming out. And so I started saying, well, discussion was a good way for students to basically ask questions offline outside of class, me contribute answers, students contribute answers, so let's go ahead and enable discussion. So the first and easy one is say, let's take a look at Canvas, and it has a threaded discussion, it's clean, it's integrated, it's already there, no problem. And then I started having students say, can you make Piazza available? And so I said, I guess I can, and so I began to figure out what was going on with Piazza. Now I'm going to be the first one to say, this is what the Piazza implementation looks like inside Canvas. So take a look at this frame. And this is Piazza. It's not pretty. They basically just cram Piazza into a frame inside Canvas. But here's what's important. The students just use it. And that's the most important thing. So this particular example provides some basic capabilities that Piazza allows the students to ask questions. Other students can respond to them. I can respond to them. I can get notifications on smartphones, so we can do it whenever we need to. And that's an important part. And I think where Piazza came from the students, and this is kind of an important aspect, is it was something that a lot of the other engineering classes had already adopted. Now, they adopted it because they were working more on coding problems or problem sets. It had LaTeX capabilities built in, which allowed them to do equation generation. But most importantly, as I said, the students had already been using it. So I was simply adding a tool that the students were already familiar with and already using, which allowed them to engage a little bit more. The other thing, and this is something, if you look on the Canvas boards, you can request features. And then other people will continue to echo that these features should be requested. And this can go on for years. One of the things that has been requested of the Canvas discussions is anonymous posting. And this is hugely important. I took it completely for granted. But students, when they're able to post without their name being associated with it, will post more questions, period. It makes sense when you begin to think about it, but it is incredible to see what it does. I have found that students have gotten a little bit more comfortable with non-anonymous postings as well. The other thing that's nice is you can see when they're actually asking questions, and I get to measure my response time. So I've got about a 1.5 hour response time, which is pretty good. Sometimes it's longer. Once you know when the spikes are going to happen, and you can probably guess when the spikes are going to happen, the night before the assignments are due. That's when I kind of tune in and I'm online. But the aspects of students being able to answer, me being able to answer and comment, just engages them in a really old world way. I mean, this is about as old as the technology gets, but they just use it. The second one, this was actually for a grad executive master's class that I was teaching spring and summer on a business planning or a venture planning class. And Big Blue Button is built into Canvas. I don't know if anybody's tried that. I've tried it. It just doesn't work very well. Adobe Connect is used a lot on campus, and I find that if people just seem to have more technical problems. And so I had used GoToMeeting in Business World, and so I said, let's try this. There are educational discounts for it, and we just implemented GoToMeeting. It's not rocket science. It has all the capabilities that you would expect in video conferencing, but whereas Big Blue Button was integrated into Canvas, is free is always good, it just didn't work. There were more technical difficulties both from the learning side and the student side. So we just went to a GoToMeeting capability, full audio video conferencing. Students could call in, they could video conference in, they could use whiteboard, chat, they could contribute, they could post slides and present to the class remotely. We could present and everybody could see. It just was easy to make work and have happen. Now, this was mostly synchronous, but we could record the sessions and did record the sessions because not all the students could attend. So it had asynchronous capabilities as well as synchronous, which was important. And for us, because it was an exec master's student class, not all the students could always come when the class was in session. And so we literally were able to expand it from about a 10 to 12 person class to about a 24 person class because students were able to take it and be able to participate remotely, which is pretty important. I will say, and I don't know if anybody's tried this, but operating a class where you've got half the people in the classroom, half the people outside of the classroom, giving feedback on business plans and ventures that they're presenting, fielding questions from the online people, from the offline people, I was exhausted after every session. And so there is the need, I think, for a facilitator depending on how many people you've got, and certainly in the MOOCs, everybody knows this. So the real confession, and this is probably heresy in this type of thing, but I tried something new this semester in one of my case study classes that I wanted to make sure that we had high interaction, that we were reinforcing what I was trying to accomplish in the course itself, as well as the specific content for the day, and basically get them physically engaged in what was going on. This was a case study that was based on a negotiation between an entrepreneur and a venture capitalist over terms of a deal. And I broke them up into groups. I had half the class play the venture capitalists, and they worked in groups to prepare their negotiation position, the other half in entrepreneurs. And we used flip charts, markers. And I have to tell you, it was probably one of the most effective things. And so every once in a while, technology is great. You just have to kind of check yourself at the door and make sure that you're accomplishing what you're trying to accomplish. So with that, and I know we want to wrap things up so we can share with others, I continue to try things, experiment, but I always try to gather the feedback from the students and keep the things that actually work and move on from the things that don't work as effectively. So I will turn it on over to the next one.
That was great. Thank you so much, Jeff. I think the flip chart slide will be tweeted a lot. I saw Vicky taking a picture of that one. So we're going to move now from the engineering school over to the nursing school. Our second speaker, Rosemary Frasso, teaches in the Masters of Public Health. She is taught actually in the new collaborative classroom, which is in Van Pelt Library. If you've not had a chance to see the classroom, you might want to stop by this afternoon. We're going to be having 2 workshops in there on active learning and social media. She's also been using photo elicitation techniques, and one of my favorite memories was coming to visit her class when they put together a gorgeous poster exhibit that was featured in Van Pelt earlier this year. So I had the rare opportunity to chat with her students, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about her work. Let me pull her slide up. Okay. Do you want me to go ahead and open your
Sure.
slides?
Well, to follow up on Dr. Babin's comment about not just abandoning what we know works well, there are opportunities to integrate technology with some standard approaches to teaching and just remembering things. Like right on my hand, I have written G17, which is where I needed to come this morning to talk about technology. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the class I teach. I've been teaching research methods courses in the graduate level for some time now, and students hate them. They hate to have to come to research class. It's mandatory for graduate level courses in social work and in public health, and they were just struggling with the courses, and it was driving me crazy because I love research and I wanted them to love it too. So using technology and with the support of Anu and others in the library, I flipped the course around a little bit. And instead of just using exercises that sort of teach research methods, together in this class, we do a research project. So we get IRB approval, we conduct research, we do analysis together, and we produce a product that students can be proud of and share. There's an upside to all of this. I mean, they have this joy in seeing a product and being out there to talk about their work. And the downside for me is that I promise them that we'll try to publish it. So that means once they graduate the program and they're done with the class, I still have them on my palette. I'm still working with students from 3 years ago on manuscripts from the data we collected in that class. So it takes a little while to kind of flush them through if you make this kind of commitment. But it's a win-win for everybody because they're involved in manuscript development and publication. I'm getting manuscripts out of a course, that otherwise wouldn't result in a product in this way. So here are some pictures from the integrative classroom. And what you see happening here is we don't have the paper flip charts because the integrative classroom has this really cool wall that you can write all over. It kind of took me a while to get over it. I'm like, really? We can write on the wall? So we would write on the wall, and we're doing something called a nominal group technique. So we're in the class, instead of just sort of learning about how to gather information and set priorities, we employ the strategies to set the agenda for the semester. So using nominal group technique, a qualitative approach to priority setting, the class determines what we're going to study for that semester. We're going to study research methods, but we need a topic to hang our hat on. We need to explore something, and they together determine it. So I never know what the course is going to be about every year. I know what strategies we'll employ to understand that phenomena, but I don't know what the phenomena is. So that's always a bit of a surprise for me, and that keeps the class fresh and exciting, and I think that's been an upside as a provider of information and a sort of a facilitator of this experience for students, because I too am learning about something I didn't know about when I came in. So this is from last year. It was the first time I ran the class in the collaborative classroom, and I'm really excited to be back there again. So what we decided to do in this class, or what the class chose to study, was pressure on campus. There'd been, as you all know, a lot of issues with suicidality on campus last year. These were mostly social work and public health students. This was on their radar, and they wanted to understand more about the campus environment and what might contribute to some of the issues of pressure that students were feeling. So we spent a day trying to land on that topic. There were 4 or 5 topics that were competing for this, for our mission for the course, but that's where we landed on studying pressure, and we decided that we would explore issues of pressure among graduate students because a lot of attention on campus had been paid to the undergraduate community, rightfully so, but this was a graduate group of students who felt like they were also sort of struggling in many ways and wanted to use the class to explore that experience and see if they could help the university move forward in their agenda to support students. Oops, let's see. Oh, I went too fast. This is a touchy little thing, huh? Okay. So the classroom setting, using the integrative classroom really allowed us to engage with the space and the technology together. So it was the space is very conducive to collaboration. If you haven't seen it, you should take a peek. It's 4 or 5 round tables, and students can work together in small groups, then they can break up into a big group. There's all kinds of LCD projectors that each student group can project their work on a wall and kind of look at it together, or we could all look at one of their projects or where they're headed in one particular moment in the class. So the space really, it's almost hard not to be collaborative in that room. And that's an important part of what makes the class work, I think, so well, is that the space is conducive to this kind of energy. Students have to be ready to take this ride with you because the syllabus is very flexible. It's in flux depending on what they decide to study. So I post a tentative syllabus, and every week it changes, and that's something that doesn't appeal to every student. So I warn them up front about it, and they can run for the hills if they like at the beginning. Most stay, but I want them to know that it is something that it's iterative, and we're going to be moving through this together as a group. So we allow the students to kind of figure out what it is they want to study together. Everybody has a skin in the game in terms of that topic. And we create this sort of instant feedback loop because we're using the methodology from the qualitative arena to sort of inform our next steps. But the other thing we do, and this is something I have to thank Anu for, is we've incorporated NVivo 10 into this course very, very deeply. So NVivo 10 is a qualitative systematic analysis support program. It doesn't actually do the analysis for you, but it helps you organize your qualitative analysis so you can query it and ask questions of it in a very systematic way. And that's built into the course. And now, because Anu has been so receptive to this, they're supporting this platform in the library. They're providing training to people across campus in how to use this technology. And then we're allowed to be able to work together as a team using this technology in the collaborative classroom. So if you're interested in, there's sessions in the library on how to use it and how to employ it. And the other software we use in this class is called Anthropack. And just the beauty of being able to do that in this space and be able to put the software up for all to see and to engage in the analysis with the students has been really, really a rich and valuable experience. And they walk out of the class, they're able to list on their resume that they know how to employ these tools, and they can sort of write about the work they did together and where it led folks across the university. It's going to use the buttons. So Anu mentioned that we use photo elicitation in this class. Photo elicitation is one qualitative approach where you ask folks to take a picture about a topic and to come back and you meet with them and you conduct an interview based on the pictures they took. Now, because everybody's walking around with a camera that's nicer than anything we owned when we were children, just in their pocket, this is something that's working really well across campus. So students in my class each had to identify a research participant from among the graduate schools across the university. They met with the research participant. They told them that we were trying to appreciate and understand the pressure that graduate students feel. And then they asked them to just keep their camera handy during the course of a week to take pictures when they thought about pressure, and then to bring those pictures back, and they would interview them based on a discussion of the photograph. So they would say, oh, this is a picture you took. Tell me why you took it. What were you thinking when you took this picture? And how did this picture make you think about pressure? And these are some of the pictures and some of the quotes that students shared. not just the students in the class, but the students they engage with across the campus. So I'll just share a couple of quotes with you from this study. So the first is a picture of a young person asleep in the library, and the interviewee, the student participant, said, "I felt like I've definitely been in this situation where you have a fraction of time, maybe 40 minutes in between classes, and it's not enough time to go home, but you're just wiped." So we got to speak a little bit about sort of this pressure students feel around exhaustion and kind of spinning their wheels. And this led to a really rich conversation with the participant around sleep and the value of sleep and how graduate students often have to forego that. They are going to sleep in 2 years when they're done, and they're not going to sleep while they're here. And that's something we felt was very important to share with the Penn community. As professors, we want to know our students are really sleep deprived. And this is something that came across in many interviews, this lack of an opportunity to put your head on a pillow and not think about anything. The next picture that was shared with a student in my class by a student in the community is a lot of medication, as you can see. And the student participant said, "I think it's probably their self-selection. As graduate students, they are people who are perfectionists, and people who are very intelligent and tend to suffer from anxiety or depression or other issues associated therein. I feel that that's somewhat of a universal thing with the people that I talk to." So this was someone telling us that they were struggling themselves with issues. They had lots of medication on hand. They had a sense that they were not alone. So we're doing something right because they don't feel isolated by this fact, but it's something that they know about and they share. I'm getting kicked off. But so this is what our exhibit would look like, and there's other examples on the Canvas site. Thank you.
So today I'm a source of pressure, right?
That's okay.
So the picture that moved me a lot from Rosie's exhibit is a picture from the 4th floor Van Pelt Library that shows stacks and stacks of books, and a quote from a student that said they felt overwhelmed that they would never be able to read all the books they needed for their dissertation. It was really interesting. That's something that we think as an accomplishment that we have 6 million books can actually inspire also a sense of fear if you put them all in a row. I will look forward to seeing what your students create in future semesters. We're going to shift gears now to talk about technology use outside of the classroom. Mary Beth Gassman is a professor of higher education at Penn GSE. I've had the great honor of actually being in Mary Beth's class, which is a very important moment for me. Let me just put this up. So what I remember working incredibly hard, doing a ton of reading, having wonderfully meaningful conversations, learning more than I thought possible each week. I also remember during each class, 0 technology was used. I don't think the classroom projector was turned on once the entire semester. So Mary Beth will be talking with us today about how she uses blogs and social media outside of class to engage her students with course material. I'm going to turn it over to Mary Beth.
I'm going to time myself, okay? All right. Okay, I'm not going to use any technology, just for fun. I'm Mary Beth. I have a huge amount of energy, so if you don't know what to do with it, my apologies. Anu is right that the first thing I say to my students, I teach history of American higher education, and the first thing that I say to my students is that from the moment they step in the door until the moment they leave, they are not allowed to use a computer, a tablet, or a phone, or any kind of technology. This almost knocks them off their feet. They don't know what to do. I've written pieces in the Chronicle of Higher Education about my views on this. It is the most beautiful 2 hours I can spend a week. It is beautiful. It is beautiful. It's a beautiful conversation. Oh, it's so lovely. And so I don't use any technology. And that's not to say that I don't use technology. I love my MacBook Air. I love my phone. I use Canvas. I use technology, but I just don't use it in my classroom. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what I do outside of the classroom, because I think a tremendous amount of learning takes place outside the classroom. And so I'm going to talk about social media. I'm just going to use, because we got 10 minutes, I'm going to use Facebook as an example. But I also use Twitter and Instagram, and I mean, I don't know what LinkedIn is, but I use it. But all I knew is everyone endorses me for things I don't do. I use all different kinds of social media. I mean, I have a 15-year-old, so, you know, I have to be pretty cool. So a couple of things. first of all, I study race in America. I'm very social justice oriented. I care about race, class, gender, sexuality, issues like that. But primarily, I focus on race. So that really plays a part in the way that I use social media outside the classroom. So I'll talk about that. I love teaching history of American higher education. I do. I love teaching it. And I teach them all about the history of American higher education from a variety of perspectives. But my main goal in that class is to teach people to live for something larger than themselves. That's all I really care about. They're all going to be practitioners. They're not going to remember everything I taught them, but they will remember to live for something larger than themselves. And so that is what I use social media to do. I want them to learn how to use their voice. So I want them to learn how to write. I want them to learn how to talk. I want them to learn how to take a stand on things that are meaningful to them. Not everything, right? We got to pick our battles. So not everything, but on things that are deeply meaningful to them. And so I urge them to use social media, especially because I know this generation. Again, I have a 15-year-old. But I really try to stay in touch with people who are a little bit younger than myself. It's really sad when you figure out that you could be their mama now, okay? So, what I do is I model that behavior with my social media accounts. I pretty much do the most daring modeling on Facebook because I feel like that's a good venue for me. I will model some of that on Twitter and other forums, but I tend not to be as daring because I think that Twitter is a little bit more open. And so with Facebook, I've got about 3,500 friends on Facebook. I don't know all of them, but they're people who know me, and I feel comfortable with them. And I would never say anything on social media that I wouldn't say right here in public or to anyone, for that matter. And so what I do is I try to live in a way that's consistent with my research. I personally have a huge problem with faculty who do research in areas like access and equity and equality and race and all of these different things, and then they live a completely different life. So I think it's really important that you live the life that you say that other people should live. And so I demonstrate that life. And so that means that if something happens in Ferguson, right, Missouri, that means that I'm going to take a stand on it. I'm going to take an educated stand. It's going to be rooted in history, but I'm going to take a stand. So not only will I probably write several blog posts, because I write for a whole variety of venues, but I'm also going to take a stand using social media. That means that people might disagree with me, and that's okay, as long as it doesn't get to be hateful, which I would never tolerate anything like that. That means that when national leaders do things, and these all connect to my research, by the way, I'm never going to step out of my research areas except for one thing, and I'll tell you what that is. I'm never going to step out of my research areas because I learned a long time ago that to speak out on things you don't know anything about is really silly. So I do history of race in America. So if national leaders are doing things that disenfranchise people of color or low-income people, I'm going to speak out. So recently, the Koch brothers, who I really didn't pay much attention to, gave a donation to the United Negro College Fund, and with the stipulation that they could select, they were on an advisory board, and that they could help select the recipients of the scholarships. I have a problem with that, especially as someone who studies white philanthropy and its control of black education. So I wrote an op-ed, I spoke to the media, and I posted about it for a while on my Facebook page. I got people to think about this. I engaged a large conversation with students of my own, but also mentees all across the country. And so that's what I do. With the Ferguson conversation, I would connect that to history. I would connect the Koch brothers conversation to history. And then I also talk about issues of integrity. I think that it's really, really important that faculty have a sense of integrity, and that faculty share that sense of integrity and that sense of the greater good with their students. And so I often will talk about those kinds of things, what it means to be a good student, what it means to be a successful faculty member, because I'm mentoring a lot of PhDs as well. So all of those kinds of things I'll share, and I engage people in conversations. And I have really great conversations with students over social media. And then the last thing I talk about is I talk about raising a 15-year-old girl, because I know a lot about it. And I came from a family of 10, and my mother came from a family of 21, so I only had one. But I know a lot about child rearing because of a long history of this. And I have a particular way of raising my child. And one of the things that I thought about is that there are lots and lots of young people who are interested in being faculty, but are not sure how they're going to balance that. So I've written a lot about how you balance that, and I share that on social media. I'm very open about my relationship with my child. I don't hide the fact that I happen to be a woman. I don't hide the fact that I'm a mother. I can be a researcher, but I can also be these other things. And I want my students to realize that you can have a balanced and well-rounded life, and that you can also spend some time fighting for justice. Because I'm not sure why we're on this earth if that's not what we're doing. If we're not making positive change every day, I have no idea why we're even here. So for me, using social media allows me to have this amazing engagement with students. And I don't care if they disagree with me. Like, as an example, I'm pro-choice, but if someone is pro-life and they feel strongly about that and they have an educated way of, like, they use research to be able to argue that point, I would support them arguing that point because I believe in the freedom of speech. And so I'm not going to dictate what someone thinks, but I'm going to push them to think differently. And I invite students to disagree with me. And a lot of times what I say on my social media comes back into the classroom, and people want to know why I said that, and I'm willing to engage them. But I'm not going to tell them what to think. I just think that they need to be critical thinkers. And I also have had many times where something I've said on social media has turned into an independent study with a student. Because they're like, oh, well, that's really interesting. Could we explore that idea further in an independent study? Sometimes that has turned into a published paper for that student. In fact, probably about 10 or 12 times now. And so I'm really open to that engagement. For me, I guess learning outside the classroom has to do with getting people to sometimes change their minds. It also, I want to get them to push themselves to think a little bit differently, to grow. And then I want to push them to action. And so that's what I'm doing with social media. It was interesting earlier. Gwendolyn asked me. She's like, "So, are you really out there?" And I said, "Yes." There's really nothing that I wouldn't say right here in this room, or in a faculty meeting, or probably anywhere else that I wouldn't say on social media. So that means that I'm not going to go crazy, but I am going to be myself in all venues, because I think it's important to be true to yourself. Now, keep in mind, I realize that I'm a tenured full professor every day, okay? So I realize that every day. So I wouldn't encourage my students to go crazy. Not that I think I'm crazy, although I have some Facebook friends in here. So, but what I would encourage them to do is, if they feel strongly about something, I think that it is important to take stands on things and to pick your battles. And so those are things that I share with them, and I try to model a life that includes that kind of fighting for something and living for something beyond myself. So there you go. That's my use of technology. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Now we're actually going to change gears back over to the sciences. Our fourth presenter is Jeffrey Savin, who's a professor of chemistry, and his classes have been working with us at the Weigel Information Commons for several years now. His course was actually the very first science course where we helped with video projects, and we actually learned a good bit of chemistry along the way. So I'm very glad to turn the podium over to Jeffrey Savin.
Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is a specific project. Not broadly about use of technology in the classroom, but a specific project. The genesis for this project actually came out of attending one of these sessions with regard to how might be able to use technology, media, in particular video, in the context of this project. So with regard to the problem, with regard to teaching biological chemistry, so this is a course that basically the only prerequisite is general chemistry. Many students take organic chemistry as a co-requisite at the same time, but they come in with a relatively sort of just a fundamental knowledge of chemistry. And so one of the problems is the intense complexity of biochemistry and how it's usually presented in textbooks and in a lot of courses. So like in this diagram right here, we can see that there's, basically there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's a compact way to represent a lot of information, but not necessarily to teach it. All right. Another is that one, particularly from a chemistry perspective, which is there are a variety of different biochemistry courses and different flavors across the campus, but from a chemistry perspective, we're kind of interested in the molecular aspects. And so we'd like to understand something about structures and the structures of molecules. And if we represent those in a two-dimensional rendering, like in a textbook, all right, or here projected on screen, a lot of times it's difficult to discern what the issue is, right, or what the key components are. Like in this case, a rendering of the breast cancer drug tamoxifen bound to its target, the estrogen receptor. Right? So there's a lot of complex information. So can we develop ways so students can interact with structures and with complex information and also show their facility and show their fluency? Right? So with regard to the course, I already mentioned that it's an introduction to biological chemistry. It's sort of at the sophomore level, although it has sophomores through seniors in the course. Some of the seniors are people in other, for example, in engineering, sometimes in Wharton. A lot of people looking to fulfill pre-med requirements, particularly now as medical schools and the MCAT are moving towards requiring more biochemistry. Another problem, I would say, is biochemistry textbooks, right? They tend to be super thick and dense with figures like the ones I just showed you, right? And so then students get really kind of overwhelmed with regard to what do I need to know, what do I need to understand with regard to what I can take away from this course. So in this course, we have on the order to start, on the order of 75 or more students. I use the plus because it's usually capped at 75, but if people request to be added and the room will accommodate that, we do that. But usually you lose a few, like in most courses, but it's a pretty big course. All right? And we have, am I not being recorded? Okay. And we have one teaching assistant. All right. So that means that we're kind of limited with regard to the amount of sort of instructor interaction we can have per student. So how do we deal with that? All right. So we still have exams. We still have other types of assignments associated with the course. All right. But there was one component that I wanted to try to include, and that was a video project associated with the course. And that's been done for 2 years now. I think we'll try to do it again in the spring of 2015 as well. And so that's what I'm going to talk about and describe in the rest of the talk today. So the ideas with the video project are multifold. One is to build a fluency with regard to the material. Can I actually use the material to explain something or to understand a particular phenomenon or a particular event or a particular type of experiment? All right? And also develop a sense of agency or ownership of the material. All right? To include an aspect of creativity and troubleshooting, because a lot of times people go through, you can go through a whole sequence of science courses and not actually have been that creative. The science, doing research actually involves a lot of creativity, a lot of troubleshooting, and that's not always presented or trained for when we take just standard courses where we learn how to memorize material and how to solve problem sets. And basically to provide a vehicle for students to pursue a particular interest in biochemistry. A lot of them come into the course, they're super excited about the course, they want to, there are reasons they're interested, they want to understand how drugs work, they want to understand fundamental aspects of genetics. And so it gives them a tool or a vehicle or a project with which they can explore that. And then also experience, since it's scientific, of course, with regard to written presentation of material. So certainly writing is important in a wide variety of courses, and particularly in the sciences, but also with regard to how to present and how to understand things visually, right? Like some of the figures I just showed. So one thing that the video provides that I think is harder to do in a 5 or 10 or 20 page paper is to talk about things in a structural, temporal, and quantitative way. By structure, I just mean structures of molecules. How are things arranged in space? How is the structure of this particular protein, this particular small molecule, relative to these other ones? How does that fit in the larger context of the structure of the cell? Temporal, if we have a sequence of events that has to happen in a particular time, this happens first, then this happens, then the other thing happens. Oftentimes, that's very easy to describe and very direct in a video format. And quantitative, with regard to the presentation of, basically of plots and other types of material that might be easy to present. So the other thing I wanted to introduce with regard to this project is certain aspects of science and the scientific community. All right. So one, these are 3 components I think are particularly important. One is the compact, clear, non-vague presentation of material. All right. That's why science is complex, because we want to be non-vague. Another is peer review, and I'll talk about that more, because that's a key component of not just science, but academics, and also a vehicle to interact with other scientists, and I'll talk about more what that means. All right, so with regard to describing the assignment, all right, students get to choose a topic of their choice. All right, basically that has to get vetted by the instructors, but to winnow it down and make sure it's defined well enough. Usually, what we focus or encourage the students to do is to present, a particular thesis or a particular theme or a particular topic, and then to support that. And it doesn't have to be support that with material that they generate in the laboratory. It can be taken from another paper or something like that. A lot of students still fall back into just being very descriptive about the project. And here's a particular event, and here's how it happens. So one thing that was crucial or key is the Weigel Information Commons. All right, so Anu and the group there were essential with regard to helping the students learn how to make these videos and how to put material together. All right, so what we did was we set up a few sessions where students would learn how various aspects of video editing software, and also there'd be a variety of different office hours that were offered as well. Students could come by and troubleshoot problems that they're having with videos. And so one key thing that after meeting with Anu, she suggested is that, and her team suggested, was that we have a timeline, a series of deadlines that students complete as they complete the project. All right, so one is that basically they present a topic that includes also references to primary literature. We talk about what primary literature means versus reviews. And then they also, that they draft a transcript. We usually don't review that too closely. It's more just sort of keep them online or keep them on pace to finish the project. And then finally, upload a final video and the transcript of the video. And what they do is usually upload that to YouTube and provide a link to the YouTube site. So each one of the students has a Google account and a YouTube account, and then we provide links to the videos posted there. And then just after those are posted and made available, we also open those up for peer review. All right. So with regard to the guidelines, sort of what's expected with regard to the video. All right, so probably the most important thing is do you effectively present some central idea, and is that supported? All right, so that's true, I think, of a wide variety of different topics, whether you write them or whether you make a video. So that sort of in order, these are the ones that carry weight with regard to the assessment of the video. One, the presentation of quantitative and structural information. That's certainly important in the physical sciences. And then features that are unique to video to explain or present information. That doesn't have to be, fancy Pixar-like renderings and things like that, but that can be, do I show a three-dimensional object from multiple perspectives and rotate it? Do I provide an animation that's particularly illustrative? And then lastly, any sort of technical aspects that are unique to video. And those are the sort of the detailed stuff, the aspects with regard to rendering and things like that. And of course, it has to have the appropriate mechanics that we might associate with the paper. Is there bibliography? Do they appropriately cite people and cite sources and things like that? Okay, so what I have here is I have a little montage of snippets from a few of the different videos. So one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of students put things in context. So we're only having about 10 seconds or so with regard to each video, so not everything's in context. The first element of the video will be on alpha-synuclein. Alpha-synuclein is a protein that's particularly important for Parkinson's disease. And a lot of students tend to choose sort of health-related things. Let's see, anything else I want to mention there? Yeah, I think, okay. I should also mention that we've done it twice. We've done it 2 years. So in the first year, it was kind of a mashup. We allowed students to generate images and also just to pull videos down off the web and sort of stitch them all together. All right, in the second year, what we thought would be better, particularly since the students had learned to use software to generate images in the first half of the course, is to do a lot of generation of their own animations and their own images and their own renderings of molecules. So all of these are taken from that second time that we've done the course, where the students have generated the images.
As alpha-synuclein is a major constituent of Lewy bodies, let's now explore its structure in detail. Alpha-synuclein is a 140 residue protein that, although natively unfolded, commonly assumes a random coil conformation. The protein has 3 domains. An amino-terminal domain. The N-terminal domain is highly conserved and normally unordered. However, an 11 amino acid repeat containing a consensus sequence, KTKEGV, allows the domain to adopt a secondary structure resembling 2 alpha helices separated by
a variety of different other approaches that students have taken over the 2 years as well.
a break.
Exactly. From our kinetic studies, we determined the Michaelis-Menten constant in the micromolar range. This suggests modest binding. In addition, regression of transient kinetics showed that competitive inhibition model fits best as opposed to other inhibition models.
If I remember correctly,
Hexokinase 2, which phosphorylates glucose and tags it for glycolysis, is pivotal in the initiation of the Warburg effect. Hexokinase 2 is bound to the mitochondria and is greatly overexpressed in cancer cells exhibiting the Warburg effect, causing the elevated...
Look at an abbreviated version of the pathway signaled by cannabinoid ligands. Activation of the receptor motivates inhibitory G proteins to inhibit adenylate cyclase and therefore cease production of cyclic AMP, a second messenger.
Out of the protein sample and test this hypothesis in several ways. First, let's examine the overall amino acid content of this T-Rex protein.
Another 5 slides or so, but basically I'll sort of wind down there. So one thing to keep it, so anyway, that's a flavor of the different types of projects that are involved with regard to headshots, with regard to manipulation of images and things like that. And I should mention that the remaining points I wanted to focus on is that one, there's a whole, with regard to evaluations of the course, it's pretty flat, all right? So there's a set of students that think this is spectacular and a really fun thing to do, and there's a set that thinks it's awful and a horrible waste of time, all right? So we're still trying to sort of negotiate that or figure out whether things want to happen, how we want to direct that. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, one thing, is with regard to the assessment, it's kind of a big time commitment with regard to viewing all these videos. There's a peer assessment component that I didn't really go into details, but we upload through Google Form. Students review each other's videos, and that we were able to provide extensive feedback on each video and provide a peer review report. And students get all the experiences of peer review, including reviews they don't agree with. All right, and so we think that's a particularly good aspect. But I would say the most spectacular aspect of this project is when they send the videos or make the videos accessible to the authors that they use to generate the videos with. And I didn't really know what to expect the first time we did that. I didn't know if the students would get any feedback, if they get any sort of response. But they get a tremendous amount of feedback. All right, they get emails back. The people are super excited that people are making videos about their work. A lot of times they ask, can I put this on my group's webpage? Will you be in Boston? Can you come meet with my group and show this video? So in that respect, I think it's kind of unique in that, or kind of an exciting aspect with regard to students can go from, I don't want to say nothing, but basically sort of a general chemistry level, learn enough, and have an opportunity to actually show that they understand material well enough and invested the time to make something that now provides a vehicle that they can exchange and provide a touchstone with leading scientists in the field. And so I think that would be harder to achieve if students just sent sort of a 5-page attachment, this is the paper I wrote for this course, and emailed it to some particular scientist. Okay, so I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much. Actually, that last comment is so interesting. There's so much we can take from that in terms of creating material for the world at large, in addition to creating material just for the professor's consumption. So our last faculty speaker this morning is Gwendolyn Du Bois-Shaw. Gwendolyn teaches in the history of art, and we've actually been working with Gwendolyn's classes for many semesters now. The list of technology tools they use is really long. I remember Instagram, Prezi, web design, blogs, visualization, PowerPoint. I'm sure there's more. I've been inspired by how her students have really connected with objects in the museum and have been able to use objects that they can physically touch with objects that they can present online. So please come up.
Collagen 1.
Oops. Do you have your materials?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm having such a fantastic time. It's, in the humanities and in SAS, sometimes we never hear from our colleagues in other schools, and this is really fantastic for me, very exciting. So everything that I'm going to show is on my page here on the Canvas site for the symposium. So you can find these links here on my page. And I just want to talk about working with students in exhibition practice. A lot of my classes are curatorial seminars. I teach about one every year, and I've collaborated with a number of institutions around Philadelphia, but particularly on campus. I've worked with the Penn Museum, the Institute of Contemporary Art here at Penn, the Arthur Ross Gallery, the Philadelphia Museum of Art to do exhibitions. And each one has been different, and each engagement that the students have had with technology has been different, and the ways that we've been able to archive it or not archive it have been interesting and challenging for me. Last year, I was working on an exhibition called Represent, 200 Years of African American Art. This is an exhibition that's going to open in January at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And I worked with two groups of graduate students, 4 students total, to help me conceive the topic, to conceive the exhibition, and for them to actually mount full proposals for exhibitions if they were the curators, if they were the ones who were going to actually be heading the project. And in order to present their ideas to the staff of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, they each group did a Prezi. And I have the 2 Prezis linked here, and you can see the differences in them. Both groups of students started with the 2 same things. A floor plan for the gallery, just like a regular kind of blueprint floor plan, and then a group of images that they worked with to construct their exhibition. The first exhibition was called Ain't I a Woman, and it focused on African American women artists and images of black women in the collection of the museum. And so you can see here the floor plan that they began with, and then just little JPEG used gallery, and they were able to each object would be, what other objects would be next to it, and how they would function and make an argument for the exhibition. This is the second one, and here we go, looking forward, looking back. And again, the same floor plan layout, different objects, some of them the same, some of them a little bit different. The students were able to kind of think about the space and how they wanted to put work within it. As they gave their presentation, they talked about the individual objects. And it was really, really neat to see how different the presentations were and how convincing they could be giving this presentation to professionals in the museum. Now, a few years back in 2006, I did an exhibition with the Penn Museum called Trouble in Paradise, The Art of Polynesian Warfare. And the students worked with war clubs that were in the collection of the museum. They had been pre-chosen, a group of them had been pre-chosen by myself and by the keeper of that collection. And then they did a website that they built themselves using Dreamweaver. And I was just looking at the dates for this project, because this show opened in spring of 2006, which was when Weigel opened. And I don't think I did it with Weigel. I think SAS Computing helped me to do this project. And when you look at it right now, it's so kind of like web 1.0, but the students built this themselves. They made these maps with close-ups on the objects, trips that we took. We were able to go to London and to Hawaii. You can see they were mostly interested in the beach, but in order to gather information for the exhibition, they did a video that chronicled. Where's our video now? I guess it's been taken down. They did a video, they posted their bibliography, etc. Now, the Penn Museum was not interested in having student product on their website at the time. So we were not able to host it on the Penn Museum site, which was a disappointment at the time, but we put it, as you can see through the URL, we put it on the Art History Department website. And because of that, I still have it. And that's great. So while I was disappointed initially, I'm now very happy that, that we ended up doing that. Let me go back here. And the last 2 exhibitions that I did with university museums, arts institutions, I was allowed to post student websites, but after the exhibition was done, they disappeared from the sites. The institutions took them down before I was able to archive them. They could not recover them, and all of the student work was lost. So this was a frustration for me, and it taught me a lesson, and I should have learned it after the first time this happened, but I didn't, that I need to do that archiving on my own. So for Samba Sessao, Afro-Brazilian Art and Film, that was at the Arthur Ross Gallery in 2012, it now lives on Facebook. The students did a number of social media platforms for this show. They have a Facebook page, and they also did YouTube videos, and some of them no longer, don't ask me again, thank you. Yes, it's 1125, thank you. They did YouTube videos, but they also, on their channel, they posted the videos that were in the exhibition that they had edited as part of the project. These were reviews of films, Brazilian films, and some of them, you know, in the 2 years that they've been up there have gotten 12,000, 16,000 views. So, you know, eventually, you know, or inevitably, this became kind of a public service thing. And then the last show that I did was with the Institute of Contemporary Art. It was called Each One As She May, Leigenreich and de Kersmacher. And this was an exhibition of very contemporary art. And again, the ICA took down our web presence after the show. And so it really kind of lives on in the Flickr site that was put together for it by the Arts and Culture Initiative. The Arts and Culture Initiative here at Penn is a really fantastic thing, headed by my colleague Karen Beckman. If you're interested in reading about it, in this week's almanac, there's a really great kind of summary of what Karen, who's actually right here, has been able to do in the last couple of years. So the show lives on in Flickr and also in a really wonderful Vimeo that was done for us by Arts and Culture with the students. Here's one of the artists, Glenn Ligon, and myself peeking out in the background. So these are just a few of the ways that I've used different kinds of technology with my students. The last thing I want to show is the Google Art Project, which I'm using this semester with my Art History 278, which is a 50-person, 50 undergraduates in a lecture class. Google Art Project has worked with different museums across the world to make really high-quality digital scans of art objects so that anybody, anywhere can enjoy them and go very close into a work of art like the Gross Clinic, which is on view at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. I've asked my students this semester, I think, for the final exam, to make their own gallery using the Google Art Project. These are really great. You can pull images from a variety of museum sites, put them into galleries, and you can also do fun things with them where you, for example, can compare objects. Close that, go up. Oh, it's not going to let me do it right now. Where you can compare objects, you can drag them into a little place, and then you can zoom in and out of them closely. And for somebody who works with images, this is great. But you could also use Google Art Project, I would think, if you had a theme that you wanted to look at, some kind of a topic, and you could pull images from all over the world. There are thousands of images that are available. And the user galleries are available. You can see how new this process is. There are just 33,000 galleries up here right now. So this is really a very kind of emerging thing that Google is offering us through their Cultural Institute. So thank you very much for your time.